guys, welcome to my class. I'm going to try to have some short video talks posted every once in a while, maybe not every week. You may not love listening to my voice that much, and honestly, isn't one of the perks of an online class that you don't have to listen to a lecture. But I do want to have an opportunity to chat with you from time to time, especially since some of my students do get to have a face-to-face sort of class with me at my high school classroom, and others of you aren't going to get that benefit. So I wanted to give you a little bit of introduction, talk about some things you need to be doing just as a reminder. It's already in Blackboard, and then talk about prehistoric art for a little bit. So everyone, I really enjoyed reading your introductions on the blog. If you haven't posted your introduction on the blog yet, you need to do that as soon as you can. I did read all of them. Some of you I already know, some of you have been in my humanities class, some of you took art appreciation with me in the past, and I'm really glad you chose to take a class with me again. I consider that a very high compliment, so thank you. Some of my high school students are thinking, well, you were really the only option, so thanks anyway. But I am really glad that you're in my class. I love our history. It's something I love learning about, as you'll find. I hope you enjoy the class too. And it's not going to be too much memorization of dates if you're worried about that. You will have to memorize some art pieces and slides. You're going to have to be able to identify them on tests. But the reason I'm doing that is because you need to know these pieces of art, and also you'll look super smart someday when you see something in a movie or a TV show, or you're at a museum and you can tell everyone what that piece of art is, and you will be surprised how often that will happen to you. So as we are starting the class, I just want to remind you how important it is to do your reading. I know that it's maybe not your idea of a fun time, but it is so essential, especially because we don't have an hour and a half together every week that we're going to be, or 3 hours, that we're talking about these pieces of art. So it's so important that you do your reading, okay? I really tried to pick a good textbook for this class, and I think this book is really readable, so stick with me, do your best, plan ahead. I mean, you have the whole week. I'm never going to assign more than one chapter from the book at a time, so you'll have the whole week to work on that chapter, and then you can move on in the next week. So plan your time accordingly. Those of you who are dual credit students, most of this class, you, I know for a fact, have some set aside class time in your high school day, so use that to your advantage. Use that as some study time. Find a good place that you can get your reading done, preferably early in the week, because then you'll have that information in your mind for when you're looking at the other pieces or things that I've put on each week. Okay? All right, so I think that's a little bit of, some of you have already contacted me, which is great. If you need me or have any questions, please don't hesitate to send me a text, call me, send me an email. I will get back to you, I promise. I am pretty busy during the day, but I promise I will get back to you as soon as possible and try to answer your questions. So don't hesitate to do that if you need to. All right, so I think that's all about the class in general. I've put a lot of information on Blackboard, so go and read that. But let's talk about prehistoric art for just a little bit. Probably not going to be your favorite chapter in the book. I mean, prehistoric art kind of, you think of it as something that maybe looks like what your kid or your niece or nephew did in kindergarten and is on the fridge. But it's so important to think about for a few other reasons. So if you took my humanities class, you know that the main idea that we really talk about in that class is what does it mean to be human, and how do we express what that means to us. So really prehistoric art exemplifies that idea, maybe more than any other art, or at least gives us a great starting point. Okay, so there's some things for you to think about this week is look at what they chose to depict in their artwork. Okay, so we don't have any written record of their society, so we really have to speculate about why these artists chose the subjects they did. Okay, but think about it. I mean, they are painting animals, creating depictions of themselves. things that they would have seen around them. However, there is that one example that your book has of the mammoth chest that's been carved, and it's part human, part lion. So, I mean, why would they choose to create that? I want you to think about these things. And the book does talk about it, and it has some interesting ideas. I have some of my own theories, so you can make some of your own theories as well. But I really think we shouldn't overanalyze it too much. I mean, obviously, they were depicting the things that they saw around them in their everyday life. So think about why they might have done that. One thing that I personally think about is that they had a very short lifespan. So if you were living in prehistoric times, the odds of you living past the age of 50 were pretty slim. I mean, they didn't have doctors or medicine. You could easily be killed by an infection if you break a bone, things like that. So they had a short life. So think about if you knew that you weren't going to be living for very long, which is hard for us to wrap our mind around because our generation of humans is so used to having a good amount of time on the earth. You know, we don't expect to die around age 30 or 40 or even, you know, to them 50 would have been very old. So we don't think about that. That's very different than our existence. But if you had a short life like that, you might be thinking about ways that you could create some kind of permanent mark on your environment, that showing that yes, I was here, I did mean something at this point in time. I think they might have thought about that. It's just a theory. I obviously don't know, but I think that that could be part of the reason that humans really want to create art. Another reason I think humans want to create art, specifically, really any human, prehistoric or now, is that we really have this desire to differentiate ourselves from everything around us. So we as humans now, which they could have understood this then as well, I'm sure that they weren't unintelligent, they were just maybe uneducated in the way that we think about being today. But we have this desire to differentiate ourselves from other animals, right? You know, I'm different from my cat. I'm different from this tree. I'm different from all these things around me. So how am I going to show how I'm different? Well, to me, one of the ways that humans are different is that we have that desire, right? Even though my cat does enjoy scratching things up, he's not doing it out of a desire to show me how cat-like he is. And as humans, I think that's one of the reasons that we create art. So that's something to think about as well. They were really maybe working out in their mind how they were different from the woolly mammoth or the lion, or even how they were different from each other. So that's something to think about as you're looking at the artwork as well. So another interesting idea that I've been thinking about with prehistoric art, and I saw this article actually that talked about how most prehistoric artists they think were actually women, which is a really interesting idea. I don't think they could have all been women. That's a little much to argue that. However, this study talked about that the art that had the handprints, like the cave at Peck Merle, where they had the handprints, they'd obviously use their hand as a stencil. They measured those and found that the length of the fingers and the spacing between the fingers proved that they were actually women. So that's something interesting to think about, that they were mostly women. Tells us maybe a little bit about their culture, that what was important, the roles between the different genders, that sort of thing. And just kind of funny, when I look at that, the woman of Willendorf sculpture, I'm sure it's probably one of the pieces that you will remember from this class. It's a very famous sculpture, by the way. But the woman of Willendorf, to me, when I look at it, and I know a few of you from reading your introduction, you have kids as well, but when you are pregnant, girls and young men, that is what you feel like you look like. So to me, I just really think the woman of Willendorf had to be carved by a woman, because when I look at that, I'm like, that's it. So just be thinking about things like that. I don't know. I think that most of the artists could have been women, which is interesting, and not something that we, as you will find as we go through this class, that's not something that is going to happen really again until the 21st century. The canon of art history has been dominated by men. We're getting a little more representation now, ladies, but really that did not happen again until the very end of the semester, and we talk about art in, well, the night after 1945, really, if you want to be really fair about when it becomes more balanced. But something interesting to think about with prehistoric art. So I don't want to make this video too long, but I do want you to think about, as you're reading, looking at the art, think about, we can't really make too many assumptions about the meaning or intent that they really had when they were creating these pieces, okay? Because we don't know that much about their culture. There's no written record, so we just don't know. It's all conjecture. But that's the interesting thing about art, is because we are making these assumptions or theories about the way of life that they had because we are looking at the things that they created. So we're adding meaning to these things that they created based on what we think about their lives, but we are also basing what we think about their lives on the things that they created. So when it talks about those Neolithic sculptures and where they're living, we're making ideas about those people based on what they created, which is completely valid because, like I said before, this is how we are expressing our human experience. But it's kind of the double-edged sword of art because, one draws upon the other. So as you're going through this class, really be thinking about that, because it's really the reason we study art history in the end, because we look at the art, we look at the people that created it, and we look at the culture or environment in which they lived. And when we think critically about those three things, then we develop ideas, which enriches our knowledge of the human experience and enriches our ideas and knowledge about those three things. So the people, what they created, and the environment that they lived in. So really, you could argue that that is the purpose of art, is for us to think about those things. So I want you to think about those three things as you're going through the material this week, and really the whole class. So I hope you enjoy. I really do love art history. I'm really looking forward to getting into it with you. Prehistoric art may be the most boring chapter we look at this whole time, and when we get to some of my favorites, I'm going to be even more pumped about it. So stick with me through the class. Keep on doing your reading, do your work each week, make sure you get your quizzes and blogs turned in on time, and that you're prepared for our first test, which will be due on January 31st. All right? So have a great week, and I will see you guys next week.